Hey, it's Skip, and today I've got 10 house rules for the classic game of Uno. Uno is over 50 years old, and as with any game that is played over generations, people have determined new ways to play. They've developed new rules to change the game up and make it their own. And today I've got 10 for you, 10 that I think work really, really well. Let's dive in. The first thing I would like to do is talk about how to assign certain powers to number cards. Now, these first two are pretty common, and that's the 7-0 rule. First, we assign the ability to switch hands to the 7. That means anytime you play a 7 to the discard pile, you choose another player at the table and you switch your hand with theirs. This is a mandatory switch, it is not optional. The same thing is said for the 0, except rather than choosing one person to switch your hand with, the entire table rotates their hand one person to the left. The next two I have for you are pretty unique. First, we're going to give the number 1 a special power, and that power is that if you play a 1 to the discard pile, you choose one card from your hand and give it to any other player at the table. They must add that card to their hand. The other special power is for the number 2. When you play a 2 to the discard pile, you choose one card from your hand and place it face down on the stock. Whoever draws next is going to have to draw that card. The final special powered number card rule that I have for you is again using that number 0. I like the idea of making the 0 a discard all. So when you play a 0, you also get to play all the other cards of that color from your hand. Again, it's an all or nothing mandatory rule. When you play the 0, you must play all the other cards. Only the final card is activated if it's an action card. So if you happen to play any skips, reverses, or draw twos, anything in the middle will not be activated. Only that final card that is played face up on the discard pile. Now, the next 5 rules I'd like to share don't necessarily involve cards with powers. They are just simply new actions that you're able to do during the game. Now, this first one is extremely common, stacking. It is so common, in fact, that a lot of people think it's just the standard way to play, that it's the official rules, but it is not. And we have a couple options when stacking draw cards. So if a player puts a draw 2 on the pile, the next player, who would normally have to draw 2, is able to also add another draw 2, passing on the penalty draw to the next person who would have to draw 4. They can do that, or they can add another draw 2, making it a 6-card penalty and passing it on to the next player. The same rule is applied to draw 4s. Once a draw 4 is played, the next player can also add a draw 4, and so on. Now you can play where those two cards are separate, where they are their own separate stacks. However, in the Uno mobile app, you are able to escalate it from draw 2s to draw 4s. So it could be a draw 2, draw 2, draw 2, and then bam, someone throws a draw 4 on. From that point on, the only way to stack is with more draw 4s. If you don't like that sort of escalation in the draw number, you can keep your stacking separate according to what type of draw card it is. Next, the ability to defend really changes how you approach playing those draw cards. Now, with this house rule, you can use skips and reverses to defend against draw cards. If a person puts a draw 2 on the pile, and I am forced to make that penalty draw, I could instead play a reverse of the same color. So if it's a red draw 2 and I play a red reverse, I send that draw penalty right back to the person who just played the card. And they have to make that draw. Or maybe I play a skip. If I do that, I send the penalty to the next player. So in that, the skip does not activate as a skip card. It is acting as a defensive card, allowing for the draw penalty to skip over me. I think that's a pretty cool rule. With this particular house rule, the reverse card still acts as a reverse. And you can see that in the action. I think that's pretty intuitive. Play the reverse, direction changes, and that draw 2 penalty is sent right back to the person who played it. The next one is also pretty common, and it is one of my favorites, the ability to cut in. Let's say a player puts a red 8 on the discard pile. If I have a red 8, I can immediately play it, even if it's not my turn next. That's called cutting in. And from there, the person who would go after me goes next. So if there were players that were supposed to go before me, they're skipped. Now, of course, this cutting in rule allows you to play more than one card of the same rank if it's the same color. So if I were to play that red 8 and I had another red 8 in my hand, I could very quickly play it. So this adds a speed element to the game. So you really have to pay attention, especially when taking part in this next house rule. And that is the sequence rule. With the sequence rule, you can play cards that are in sequential order in the same color. You're playing one card at a time, but don't forget, if you're playing with the cut-in rule, someone might be quicker than you and cut in on your sequence. And also, if you're playing where some of the number cards have powers, you cannot ignore them. And the final house rule I have for you is the double skip. So if you're lucky enough to have two skips of the exact same color in your hand, and you're able to play them both, and you skip everyone instead of just the next player. Play both the skips, immediately take another turn. All right, those are my 10 favorite house rules so far. I hope you enjoyed them. Let me know what your house rules are down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, keep on playing.